Welcome to Expedition Networking, a special segment of the Networking RX podcast. I'm Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and your host for this program. For those of you who are familiar, on the Networking RX podcast, we share information and have conversations with experts, such as authors, researchers, and social scientists. And all of these programs are aimed at helping you learn how to become better at building professional relationships and understanding why they work. In this Expedition Networking segment, however, we're going to bring on successful entrepreneurs and unique professionals and explore their networking adventure and learn how they used relationships to create lasting success. Today on Expedition Networking, we have Candy Sugarman. She is a serial entrepreneur, an FTC Small Business Center counselor who specializes in digital marketing strategies. And she's into firearms training. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. I hope. She's originally from Los Angeles, California, and then she moved to North Carolina in 2002 and recently relocated from Raleigh to, relocated to Raleigh from Fayetteville. And she has a simulated shooting range, which a business she started in 2019. Candy, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Frank. I really appreciate it.
This is great. So I guess give us the story. I mean, you're a serial entrepreneur. How did this all come about? I mean, nobody goes to high school saying, I'm going to be a serial entrepreneur. Or maybe kids do nowadays. I don't know.
Okay, let me tell you, here's an even bigger thing. I never meant to work for myself. I worked for Taco Bell corporate in the 90s and then worked for an internet bubble company up until, just before 9/11. It was like the Friday before 9/11, I got laid off. Moved over to North Carolina and so I'm in an internet bubble company. I'm doing quality assurance for the software. Okay. I have a degree in psychology. So, I am really the best person to do quality assurance on software, doing the testing. And 9/11 happens. We moved to North Carolina. And my spouse at the time, he joined the Army. And I'm looking around for jobs, and here's this I moved from Orange County, California to this little town, and I talked to people and they're like, well, we're thinking about getting a website. So, my dream of doing, the software, the internet stuff was not there. So I got my real estate license. I settled down for a little while, and I was doing marketing at the real estate company that I was at, and the owner died, didn't like the new management, left. But all of the agents were like, hey, we still need you to help us. So I was like, okay. So I took a full-time job and I'm doing this part-time. And at a certain point, I just said, I can't do both. And I thought, I can always get another job. So I jumped into doing this business. And that was 2008. I started 2009 was when I was like, yes, I'm a business owner. Quick aside, my father was so disappointed that I decided to become a business owner and not get a job and not have a job.
That's funny because my dad was the same way. My dad was a college professor, and I've got two siblings. I've got a younger sister, and an older brother. And the same month, we all three decided to be self-employed.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but it's kind of a culture shock, right? It's like, why don't you just hire somebody to pay you? It's like,
Be an employee.
I hired myself, it's better. And he's come to grips with it now, come to terms with it, because we're, none of us starved. We all have done well.
Right.
But that's funny that you say that. I mean, and maybe it's just a cultural thing that,
It's possible. My father didn't have much more than a 9th grade education. He worked at Armin's Plastic, where they literally made plastic bags and things like that. And he worked there for 20 years, hated it, but retired. And that's what he wanted me for. He was, I want you to work at a place and just, 20 years and that. And I was like, well, I'm kind of doing this and seeing where it is. Unfortunately, he passed not much long after I started doing that. So he really didn't even see me. I mean, so the firearm stuff, right?
Yeah.
Girl from LA. I'm not a firearms person, not a gun person. I grew up and there was a lot of gangbangers. So, my association of guns was not a positive one. And so I end up going to this NRA Women's Wilderness Escape in New Mexico. right? NRA owns something like 36,000 acres or something ridiculous like that. And I didn't even care about the gun part. It was, I got to be in New Mexico, and it was, $1,500, and it was food and lodging for 10 days.
Wow.
Right. Right. And then, of
Yeah.
course, all the activity was included. But I was like, I'll just jump in the car and travel around New Mexico. Long story short, I stayed. I really enjoyed myself. I came back to North Carolina and started a women's only shooting group. And that was kind of what started that particular business, which was about a year after I started the other business. So I'm doing those two things, sometimes well, sometimes badly, because I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no resources. And I'm growing my business by word of mouth, which, social media was brand new back then, obviously.
Yep.
A lot of people were like, what's this Facebook thing that you keep talking about? And just as an aside, I still meet people who are like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing something. I'm thinking about getting a Facebook page. I'm like, okay, it's almost over, but whatever.
Right.
And I started talking to people, and that's how my business grew, was the word of mouth. People, hearing me speak, understanding me, just, connecting me with other people. I started doing speaking engagements. And after my speaking engagements, funny enough, for both the guns and for the social media, I would get a flood of Facebook requests and LinkedIn requests. And that's how I kind of used my relationship marketing. And then back in 2019, which seems about 1,000 years ago, based off of my firearms training company, I decided to open a simulated shooting range, because you don't need ammo for it. There's low risk because there's no bullets in it. And
right.
It was accessible to everyone. So that's how I kind of found myself having 3 businesses and, happened to be a business counselor at a local community college.
Well, I mean, that's a fascinating story. And I don't want to say it's unique. The gun thing certainly makes it unique, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's just, that makes you the unicorn of all the people I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of people. But I guess my question for you is, was there a point where you really realized that, okay, it's this relationship thing, or were you just kind of doing it and it's like, I mean, sometimes we do things and it works, and then sometimes we do things because we know it's going to work, if that makes sense.
I'm in the first category. So at one point I was, and I'm trying to even remember the thread. This was probably about 2010, 29, somewhere early. I spoke to someone about needing a virtual assistant. And she hooked me up with someone else who couldn't help me, who hooked me up with this woman named Mary. And Mary and we just met over the phone, and it was just it. The synergy was there.
Right.
You know how you just click.
Yeah.
And she and I kept in touch. She hired me to do some stuff for her. She recommended me. And it took about 10 years before we met in person. She called me the best friend she's never met.
Right.
But, I was, for her, and she and I were constantly referring people to each other. When we couldn't do that, I was sharing her information. She's a business coach, so I would promote her webinars and what she was doing, and she would do the same for me. So yeah, it's about the relationship. And even more so, here's the strange thing. The social media and my presence in the community in Fayetteville really lend itself to the firearms training part of it, because people knew me. And so when I would mention, by the way, I'm a firearms trainer, and I don't know if people see me, but I'm not necessarily a very large person.
No, yeah.
You're supposed to say you look really big, Candy. I'm 5'2", and now with my COVID weight, I'm like 120. I mean, I'm not a type of person that you see and you're like, oh my gosh, don't get her mad. I mean, like, there's nothing about me that's intimidating for people. And plus I'm a little goofy. And when I would do these speaking engagements, and I would mention the firearms business, a lot of times in the social media, just as what I do. And that built the relationships, because people then knew who I was. It built that know, like, and trust, and they felt comfortable referring me to other people. Now, I'm going to tell you, it doesn't always work out. I had this one woman, previous to COVID, I did a lot of networking, and I had this one woman who said, you know what, Candy, you're great. I know you know what's going on in social media. You're great social media, but I will not promote you and I will not refer people to you because of the guns.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. And I've run into that a number of times. Women who were like, I love you. You're great. You know what you're doing, but I'm not going to refer people to you.
Well, I think, life all evens out. There are probably people with you because of the guns.
Absolutely.
And you and I have spoke before. I mean, you're not the, I'm going to put this, you're not the wacko, gun-toting, shooting up in the middle of at night kind of it's all it's professional. It's
Right.
proper training.
Right.
So it's not advocating, hey, everybody should have an Uzi kind of a thing. But I'm sure there are people who are been attracted to you just because it's like, okay, you are a strong, confident woman. And
I teach other women. And I teach other women how to be safe and how to protect themselves and their family. And so, that's a relationship that I can build.
Yeah.
And that's something that I can do. And that is something that, is all of mine. So I don't ever tell them, well, I hate you and I'm not going to recommend anyone to you. I say, okay, well, those are your values and I can understand that. And, certainly if you had a value that I didn't agree with, then I wouldn't recommend people to you. And, we go on. I don't do the burn the bridges, because those people, if something bad happens to them and all of a sudden they want to be able to protect themselves, they're coming to me.
Right.
And then they become my biggest advocate.
Well, I think a lot of times people like that, they have a misinterpretation as to what you really stand for.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I do these girlfriend gun parties where I go to women's homes and I bring firearms, live fire, obviously, and I train them. And I'm funny and they laugh and they're comfortable and they learn, and it gives me a real opportunity to kind of educate them on things. So, that's very important. I just did a birthday party. This woman hired me to do firearms training, and I brought my virtual shooting range with me for 5 12-year-old girls.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I got them to the point where they were comfortable and you could see their just confidence grow. And, that was, again, another referral.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your firearms business. What would be a good referral? People listening, what are some ways that they could help you?
Well, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. So if anybody's listening near Raleigh, certainly if you have, now I do train primarily women. So at this point, I've trained about 600 women and 2 men.
Oh, okay.
So I'll train a man if you really need to, but I mostly train women, and it's any woman who is scared of guns and wants to get over it. Any woman who has some firearm knowledge, but maybe hasn't been shooting in a while, or a woman who, their biggest training was somebody gave them a gun, said, point that way and pull the trigger.
Right.
I'm able to fill the gaps. I'm able to get them much, much more comfortable with shooting. And I'm always looking to partner with companies that are firearm adjacent, that are all about promoting positive women images in the world of firearms.
Now, how about the social media end of it? That's not, you're not limited to North Carolina.
No, so social media is certainly something that I pulled back. I do, so in social media, I do 2 things. One, I do the whole done for you services. I actually just expanded from social media to digital marketing. So for me, I'm looking for the service tradespeople, your plumbers, your roofers, exterminators, the ones who are like, look, I'm going to be out in the field and doing the work. I don't have time to be on Facebook. I don't have time to fix my website. I can take care of all of that so they don't have to, and get the phone ringing for them. I also do training, which I get a lot of people, especially small business owners. They have a limited budget. They can't afford a monthly fee for anything. They've got a receptionist or a secretary or even their kids that are doing their social media for them. I can train them on how to actually create a strategy on social media and to execute it, and all the ins and outs that, if you're hired to be a receptionist, you don't have background in marketing or business, I can help fill those gaps.
Gotcha. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, the best way to get a hold of me is my phone number is 910-723-3899. And here's the thing, if you really need me, you can Google Candy Sugarman, North Carolina. I am the only Candy Sugarman in North Carolina, and you'll start seeing all sorts of results pop up, mostly with pictures of me with guns and a concealed carry fashion show and yada, yada.
Gotcha. All right, some fun questions here. What one person from history would you like to meet?
What one person from history that I would like to meet? There's so many women in history that I want to meet, simply because they were the first, right? The female who was a pirate, and they didn't know she was a woman until she died.
Right.
I love that. There are, I am trying to think, there's the Russian witches, right? The female fighter pilots during World War II. Oh my gosh, they were given the old noisy planes because, they didn't hear, you're a woman, you're not gonna be able to do anything. And yet they were able to bomb the German forces. All of them, all the women who kicked butt during times when they weren't supposed to, but they said, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Well, 30 years from now, somebody's going to say, I want to meet Candy Sugarman. All right. You win $1 million in the lottery. How do you invest that in your business?
Oh, okay. Well, given that I've got a lot of businesses, let me tell you.
All right.
First, right, do you have an hour? Certainly with the social media, I would probably go ahead and hire a sales team. The sales team and the support staff. A great administrator, as someone who was a previous administrative assistant, a great administrative assistant is going to save your world. They're going to save you time. They're going to bring you ideas. They're going to do all of that for you. So definitely that for the social media. For the firearms, one of the things that I've done in the past, which is the concealed carry fashion show. It's a fashion show that shows women the unique ways they can conceal carry. It's also about firearms training, as well as different methods of training. So I had like a home security expert there. I had a bodyguard there. I had all this. I'd love to be able to do that again. It's a great program. It doesn't make me money. And I like living indoors. So maybe even a concealed carry wear line. I would start with that for women. And then for the simulated shooting range, that's probably an easy one. I would get a location, because right now it operates as a pop-up. So I go to events, which means I'm at the mercy of the whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
I think I've spent my entire $1 million.
No, that's good. Those are great answers. Those are certainly great answers. Last one. How many unread emails do you have sitting in your inbox?
Just about 6 or 7 in all 18 of my emails.
Okay. Well, that's how, I've had answers all the way up from 1,500 down to 0. So you're.
Wow. I do my best to kind of get to 0. Occasionally it's I'm not going to answer that because I'm waiting on something. So I won't even click on it because I can't finish it. So I'm not going to click on it.
Well, the theme I find amongst entrepreneurs is a very, very low number. Mm-hmm. I think it's because you don't want to miss out on opportunity. I think that's it. You're in corporate America, you're drawing a paycheck. It's like, it's Barney down in accounting, and I don't know what he wants, but we'll let it go.
Right. You don't have to build those relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate you talking to me. And if there's anything I can do for you, you know where to reach me.
Before we wrap up, remember, we're looking for some enterprising business types to join our team as franchisees of AmSpirit Business Connections. Our franchisees work with entrepreneurs, sales representatives, and professionals in their area to help them become more successful through networking in a structured, weekly morning meeting. This is a unique franchise opportunity, as successful business types or professionals can add this on to what they're already doing. Again, all of our franchisees do something else. For a couple hours in the morning, only a few days a week, these franchisees work the AmSpirit Business Connections program. The rest of the time, They're entrepreneurs and professionals of various kinds. The great thing is that this allows them to make more money from professional connections and at the same time make money building professional connections. Perhaps you know someone, perhaps you are that someone. Whatever the case, to learn more about the AmSpirit Business Connections franchise opportunity, please contact me using the email in the show notes or the one we provide at the end of the program.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.